Will Popko, what's going on, my man? Good to see you. Good to see you. Viewer number one, welcome to another episode of Whiskey Through Food, aka WTF. Super excited to be live another Monday. Very excited to be having a cocktail, do a little bit of food pairing, talk a little bit of whiskey with you as well. As always, Whiskey Through Food airs every single Monday and every single Friday, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, when I'm not operating with some technical difficulties. It's always so difficult. Things always are going to go wrong, but that's all right. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Nobody gets a gold medal for starting off a race strong, right? So, today we're going to be talking about two of my absolute favorite whiskeys at the same darn time. This is the first time that we're going to be kind of mentioning two whiskeys at once. So please bear with me. I'm very excited to be able to bring to you Whiskey Through Food, starring Ardbeg Supernova 2019 release, as well as Ardbeg NO, which is a core range release from 2017. One of the pillars, or the monsters of smoke, as we're referring to them. The monsters of smoke, essentially that trio, is three of the five whiskeys in our core range: Ardbeg 10-year, Ardbeg Wee Beastie, and Ardbeg NO. I was actually thinking as I was kind of getting on to go live that I might even mix these two whiskeys together, call it Super NO. I'm hilarious, maybe? Funny? Yeah? Funny or not? All right, fine. That's okay. So, we're going to be talking about these two whiskeys. Then I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of food pairing. I've got a very delicious treat today. As you all know, I have a little bit of a sweet tooth. So, our food pairing of the day is going to be one of my absolute favorite cookies, the Petit Écolier. A very delicious French cookie. This is a European milk chocolate cookie, absolutely fantastic. What I've gone ahead and done is I've actually spread a little bit of roasted peanut butter over the top of it. The peanut butter is lightly salted, a little bit of a roast to it as well. So it's going to help boost some of the nutty aspects that you're going to see represented in both of these whiskeys, but for two very, very differing reasons. So I'm super excited about the food pairing. Let's dive into Supernova. Supernova was built by Dr. Bill Lumsden and our whiskey creation team to really very much so encapsulate everything that is supposed to be Isla whiskeys. Heavily peated, but then also at the same time supposed to be the most expressive Ardbeg to date. Supernova, if anything, is not necessarily one whiskey, but it's an experiment that the whiskey creation team goes through every single year. So some years we actually get a release of Supernova. Other years it doesn't grace our palates and our back bars. But Supernova 2019, one of my absolute favorite iterations. I would say 2014 is also another really, really delicious whiskey as well. Those are two of my probably favorites from the Supernova series. This one in particular, absolutely fantastic bottling proof of 53.8% alcohol by volume. Not quite cask strength, but we are going to be talking about a whiskey that is quite up there. Proof always matters. I think that proof can tell you a little bit about not only the way that a whiskey is going to move in the glass and ultimately on your palate as well, but also it's going to tell you a little bit about the flavor profiles that you're going to be able to experience through it as well. What's going on? Corby, good to see you on here as well. Cheers. Right. So, Supernova 2019, 53.8% alcohol by volume. Ooh, on the nose. Just this really beautiful, kind of light, almost stone fruit aspect to it. I immediately go to like peaches, maybe a little bit of nectarine as well. Things like almond start to jump out of the glass as well. Salt, saline, and of course, that beautiful, massive, massive peat. A part of the Supernova series, or I guess a piece of the Supernova series, deals directly with something that's a common conversation in peated whiskeys: phenols and phenolic compounds, right? So essentially, like, what is a phenolic compound? Well, a phenolic compound is essentially a hydroaromatic compound. For layman's terms, I like to refer to them as these beautiful flavor crystals. Phenols have a little bit of a heavier molecular weight, so during distillation, you're going to lose a lot of phenols. Through aging, you're going to lose a lot of phenols as well. So a portion of Ardbeg Supernova is peated in more phenolically rich than what we use to create Ardbeg 10-year, Ardbeg Wee Beastie, NO, Korjavrekken, and Ugadal. Um, those whiskeys utilize a malted barley that has been peated to a level of 55 to 65 parts per million in terms of its range, right? For a whiskey like Ardbeg Supernova, a portion of this is peated to about 90 to a little over 100 parts per million, which is pretty interesting. Again, Port Ellen malting facility where we take our malted bottom is absolutely fantastic. Actually, I was just looking at some video from my last trip to Port Ellen, the maltings, and actually the tour that we took was actually guided by none other than Colin Gordon. So for you true Ardbegian fans, you will know that name, and over the next few years, you'll get to know that name a whole heck of a lot better. Colin Gordon was actually the distiller over at Lagavulin, Coila, as well as one of the site managers for Port Ellen malting facilities. But that was in his previous life now. A mere 16 days ago, he took over as, well, geez, would it be 16? About 19. God, the date. About 19 days ago, he took over as the distillery manager at none other than Ardbeg. So that was pretty cool to get to see, video of some interactions that we had together a little while ago. Brian Kirby, what's going on? Good to see you. Dorian, my man, what's going on? All right, so on the nose, we talked a little bit about all of the aspects that this whiskey is going to bring to this glass. The stone fruit, the saline, the nutty aspects of it as well. There is this raw vegetal kind of peat, lots of lipid oils. You can see that when you move this whiskey around in its glass. Remember, proof is always very important. 53.8% alcohol by volume. You can see these legs start to develop very slowly. This whiskey is almost cumbersome in its glass, meaning that it's going to have a whole lot of free fatty acids. I expect this whiskey to be able to kind of grip to the sides of my palate and have power. So I'm very excited about this as well. As always, cheers, Slanjava. Let's dive into it. There it is. That beautiful fat, those lipids, that richness that we're looking for, and then comes in this very pointed, like phenol component where the smoke is not necessarily back palate; it's more front and mid palate. Um, it, it's almost kind of like a fastball right down the middle of the plate, because I get the pointedness of the smoke, the pepper, the vegetation all starts to fall off to the sides. The citrus note on Ardbeg is always very much so kind of right there. I think Ardbeg, it typifies this duality between heavily peated. Again, some of this is peated to a level of about 100 parts per million. But then also being that Ardbeg is the only distillery on Islay that uses a purifier, we're able to achieve this levity and this balance between all of these heavy phenolic compounds as well as this kind of light ethereal nature. Even, you look at the coloration of a whiskey like Supernova 2019. It's got this auric gold that we kind of like to see. Things like the 10-year, things like Korjavrekken is a little bit darker as well than either of those two whiskeys. But it's very light in its coloration, meaning that not a whole lot of this whiskey is going to be 12, 13, 14 years old. Again, phenols are going to start to you're going to lose them throughout maturation as well. So the longer that you have a heavily peated whiskey in cask, essentially the more of those phenols and the more of that smoke that you're going to lose throughout the aging and throughout its maturation process. So again, some of this whiskey, is going to be substantially younger than 12, 14, 15 years old, which is actually pretty fantastic. All right. Now, let's dive on into Ardbeg NO. I love these two whiskeys, and we're definitely going to be putting these two into the same glass. I'm going to commit a little bit of blasphemy, but it's my segment, my show. These are my bottles of whiskey. I'm going to do what I want with them. I encourage all of you to do the exact same. Don't let anybody ever tell you that there's only one way to drink whiskey. Well, I guess there is, and it's the way that you want to drink it, right? So Ardbeg NO, absolutely fantastic. 46.6% alcohol by volume. Multiple components. I like to think of Ardbeg as kind of like the greatest hits of the distillery, if I had to, like a compilation more or less, because there is some ex bourbon cask, first and second fill ex bourbon cask, the same whiskeys that make up Ardbeg 10-year, right? Again, the heart and soul of Ardbeg is always going to lean on first and second fill ex bourbon, maybe a little bit of third in there sometimes as well. But for the Scotch industry, about 90-95% of the casks that are in utilization are generally ex-bourbons, right? You're also going to have another component that is wholly matured in virgin American oak. So think bourbon barrels or American standard barrels that were actually purchased before they could be utilized by our fantastic friends down in Kentucky and everywhere else that bourbon is made. There's also a third component, which I think if we use our whiskey heads, we can start to deduce where this whiskey starts to get a lot of coloration from. I think it's going to be that virgin American oak. And I also think it's going to be the fact that there's some Pedro Jimenez sherry cask creeping around in here as well, which means that this whiskey is chocked full of this kind of this juxtaposition, right? Heavy phenols coming from younger whiskey that's been aged in virgin American oak. You're also going to have this richness, this fruity aspect coming from the Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. But again, all of the structure is built in the first and second fill ex bourbon barrels as well. So you've kind of got a piece of all of the other whiskeys that make up the core range, right? You've got virgin oak. Brecken uses virgin French oak. Instead of using virgin French, we're using virgin American. Ugadal has a sherry component. Instead of being Oloroso sherry, now we're talking about Pedro Jimenez. And then also you're going to have, again, that first and second fill ex-bourbon cask typified by the 10-year, right? So there's a piece of all of the other whiskeys, or at least an idea of all the other whiskeys going into Ardbeg NO. Rasmus, good to see you on here, my man, good friend, and Andrew, good to see you both of y'all. Let's dive into this whiskey again. 46.6% alcohol by volume. On the nose, even from quite a ways away, before I even really bring it up to my olfactory system, there is this inherent fruitiness. Again, take that Ardbeg, that lemon, that lime, all of those beautiful citrus notes that you're able to pull out of an Ardbeg, something that makes it very unique. But then you're also going to now start to throw things like under-ripened Bing cherries, strawberries. Strawberries are very indicative of some of the aromatics that you'll actually smell on Isla anyway. When you walk around on Isla, like I have mentioned, on a great day near the malting facility, you'll have this kind of strawberry aromatic in the air. And that's indicative of a healthy germination that's taking place at the maltings, right? So that's kind of tethered back in as well. Again, NO is a non-age statement whiskey, so there is bound to be some young whiskey. I believe that peated whiskeys showcase themselves incredibly well at a young age. So I'm never afraid of young bottlings of Isla whiskeys or even non-age statement Isla whiskeys as well, right? All right, let's dive on in. There's that fruity aspect, the salinity, really beautiful. The vegetable notes are absolutely humming in this glass of whiskey as well. I'm going to go ahead and taste it because I've been talking about it now for a while. And even at 46.6% alcohol by volume, substantially lower than what we're going to see in Ardbeg Supernova. Again, we've still got a non-chill filtered whiskey, plenty of free fatty acids, lots of lipids kind of roaming around in this glass. The palate application of this whiskey is fantastic. It's soft, it's decadent, it's meaty, it's fruity, it's citrusy, all at the it's herbaceous, it's peppery. Just a really, really confusing glass of whiskey. And now, the moment of original sin, Super Anova is born. 1 part Supernova, 1 part Ardbeg NO. Let's see how this tastes. I'm going to catch some hell from this. David Blackmore, if you're watching, Slanjava to your health. Tightly wound. Woo! Thrashing. That thing is thrashing around. You've got all of that raw power coming from a component of Supernova that's been peated well beyond that 55 to 65 parts per million. And then you've also got all of that richness that's going to come from Ardbeg NO. Now, let's go ahead and make a little bit of a cocktail because I think it's about time. All right, so for our delicious cocktail today, I've made a very fantastic cocktail that's going to pair incredibly well to our delicious cookies today. We have the Petit Écolier, which is, again, a European chocolate cookie. I've gone ahead and spread a little bit of salted peanut butter over the top of it, right? So we're going to go ahead and food pair this real fast before we actually dive into the tasting. Cheers, Slanjava. All those fats that we were looking for from the peanut butter are really going to complement a lot of the free fatties and lipids that are going to take place in this glass. I'm very excited about it. Let's dive into it just a little bit here. All right. Oh man, that's a fantastic little food pairing right there. Little bit of chocolate, little bit of nuttiness, lots of fruit represented in the whiskey, not so much here in the cookies. Oh, that's fantastic. I think it's time for a cocktail now. Absolutely fantastic food pairing. Again, that was the Petit Écolier that had a little bit of peanut butter kind of dripped over the top of it. I'm a huge fan of fats and how fats can fats and lipids can change the way that our palates perceive or engage with different flavors. I think that it's absolutely fantastic and incredible to see how textures will start to augment our perception of flavors. Really interesting as well. All right, so for our cocktail today, we've got a little stirred ditty. We're going to start this cocktail off with about a half an ounce of Ardbeg Cam. First and second fill ex-bourbon barrels, a little bit of Pedro Jimenez sherry cask, as well as some whiskey that is wholly matured in virgin American oak casks. Next, we're going to add to that 3/4 of an ounce of Ardbeg Supernova 2019. So we've got two different whiskeys from Ardbeg, harnessing the power of two different whiskeys to make this delicious cocktail. And now we're going to throw into this about 3/4 of an ounce of Campari. I'm a huge fan of anything that has Campari and peanut butter. So that's where this cocktail is heading, 3/4 of an ounce. And then we're going to follow that up with 3/4 of an ounce of a tawny style port. Delicious tawny style port. Here we are. That's going to give it a really fantastic weight. The coloration of this cocktail is going to be fantastic as well. So we're going to stir this cocktail for its dilution. If we really felt like it, I guess we could throw this cocktail for dilution. But I think that, stirring it will give us the correct density and palate application that we're really hoping for. Prep our glassware. We're going to serve this one over rocks today. All right. And away we go. Oh, I should say I wanted to do a dash of chocolate bitters, 2 dashes of chocolate bitters, just to give us a little bit more of that aspect of the cookies. Stirring, stirring, stirring. Everybody stirring. I hope everybody's having a fantastic Monday. This is a really great way for me to be able to end my workday so far. I shouldn't say end that. The work's never over, and we're not done after this. But it's great that I get to call this a little bit of work. I can smell both of these whiskeys already. The black peppery aspects coming from the Supernova are really present coming out of the glass as I stir this cocktail. All right, let's find a strainer around here. That's okay. There's no strainer back here, and that's all right. Sometimes you just got to work with what you have. So we're gonna, because, oh man, I just remember days behind the bar where it was like, you got to work with what you got. be an improvisational artist. Words are so hard today. But improv is everything. So you got to be able to make things up on the fly and kind of hit the ground running. Absolutely fantastic cocktail, but we're not done just yet. Earlier this morning, I was able to kind of skim some of the fats off of some peanut butter. So we're going to use that peanut butter oil, to kind of kiss the top of this cocktail with just a few drops of it. There we go. And that way, we're bringing back aspects of the food pairing and incorporating it into our cocktail itself. I'll pull out the food pairing again just for those of you who missed it. Le Petit Écolier, chocolate European milk chocolate cookies. And we can even go ahead and adorn the side of our glass with one of these cookies with a little bit of peanut butter dressed on top of it. And there you have it, today's Whiskey Through Food cocktail. Let's go ahead and see how we did on the pairing. The fat's really sitting right on top of the cocktail. Really unique presentation. It gives it a great nose as well. Get my hair out of it. There's kind of a brioche or bready aspect to the cocktail as well. All of that saline, that salt is popping off. The Campari gives it a really wonderful complexity. The fats from that peanut butter hit the very kind of top of your upper lip, really start to kind of coat everything. So you get this lipid and kind of fatty aspect that we love about some of the Ardbegs. Tawny port really helping to boost some of the nuttiness and a little bit of that rich kind of fruit aspect that we were pulling at coming from Ardbeg Anno. Fantastic food pairing. Let's go ahead and see how the cocktail stands up to the cookies. Excuse me. These two, match made in heaven. The chocolate from the cookie, the chocolate from the Scrappy's bitters, the peanut butter, the fats from the oils from the peanut butter kind of used as garnish on top of the cocktail. The peanut butter itself spread on top of the Petit Écolier. Fantastic food pairing. Again, density and weight is everything when we're talking about, palate application. So these two things are absolutely kind of singing in the same wavelength. I'm a huge fan of the way that both of these are pairing to each other. I'm Cameron George, National Ambassador for Ardbeg. Happy Monday. As always, Slanjava, and I'll see y'all on Friday. Cheers. That's a ditty.